Monefa White is a woman of God and a business mastermind. She grounds herself in the truth of the word and lives her life under the banner of loving her neighbors as herself. A Jamaican who created her own path to success, Monefa White, come make
All
the
right.
talk.
Hey, Monefa, thank you so much for hopping on and talking with me today. I really, really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on and just share your story, share your journey, share your life path with us so that we can get some insights into, what it has taken to get you where you are right now.
Right.
And I want to start the conversation off just by talking about your childhood, talking about like what it was like growing up. What, if any, were some of the conversations that you'd have had with your parents, with people who would have been influential in your life, just about ambition and drive and having a vision for yourself. What was that experience like growing up?
Well, first I want to just say that I'm excited to be here. I'm also nervous, which is so weird, right? Because I don't carry a nervous personality normally, but I'm excited, right? Talking about my childhood, I had a very social studies book kind of childhood where them talk about mother and father.
Oh, wow.
So I had that nuclear family. I had mother, father present. I had my brothers and my sisters. And then I grew up with a host of, I guess I had the extended family as well. Because then I had cousins and aunts and uncles. And then I had those people that were friends of my parents that became aunties and uncles too. So I had like a plethora of people in my life.
That sounds like your house always nice.
Listen, they used to call my house Grand Central Station.
What?
Right?
I don't disbelieve that. Yeah.
You could always come to that house and get a meal. You could always come to that house and get a bed for sleep on.
Wow.
And it was just that. My parents, I think from I was young, my parents instilled in me that I had this ability to be great, that I didn't really need to fear boundaries, that I didn't really need to fear any ceiling or any box that people really placed me in. And so from I was young, they taught us, they taught each of us how to love people differently, right? And my parents were big on recognizing that when you love people differently, the outcomes that you get are different, right? People start to respond to you differently. They treat you differently. And so, growing up, that was kind of the environment that I was surrounded with. Both my parents were just lover of children. And so they loved people and they loved children. And so they were always taking in people, always a kidnap people, always a take people. And so what happened was my house became almost like a transition home where children would just come in and my parents would pour into them and love them differently. And then they would leave and they would go on and then they would come back. And they would send gifts for them and stuff for them and do all these things for them. And I kind of just envisioned my life like that, right?
So how did that experience at home impact how you showed up at school and showed up with your friends and showed up in the classroom?
So, I mean, growing up, that experience kind of translate. My parents, like when I went to school, I kind of just knew that I had to be a leader. So I wasn't.
So you had lots of friends. You were popular.
Yes, man. I didn't have no friend and company, no friends, right? But I was into track and field when I was growing up. So I went to champs, get record, go up on national team, and all of them excitement there, right? Try out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that caused me to have a different group of friends. Because growing up, I was academically sound, but I also didn't really like academics, right? I was doing it because that made my parents happy. But for me, I had like a carefree spirit. I wanted to be a star. Let's put it simple. I wanted to be a star.
Of course.
Of course. And so because of that, I went to San Diego High. And so San Diego was a big athletic school.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, athletics track and field seemed to be that door to stardom. And so that's the door that I kind of went through, right? But while I was doing track and field, I kind of realized that it required a lot, right? It required for workout and discipline. And I mean, I went to high school in a time with some exceptional athletes, right?
Wow.
They performed at the Olympic level, right? We're talking about, I went to school with people like Karen Stewart and Melanie Walker and Kenya Sinclair. And,
competition.
Right. And then there are some big stars, right? And at that time, right, those people were and to this day, we're still friends, which is so crazy, right?
That's nice.
20 odd years of friendship.
Wow.
But those people became my people. They were my people, right? And so I realized very early on that, even though I didn't really love track and field, I loved those people. I loved them. And my parents, like I said, always wanted them over. My father was big into that. He was big into making sure that kids had something to eat at school. So he would always just come and make sure that we eat. Sometimes he would sit and eat with us breakfast early, and we'll sit down and we'll eat. Yeah. When we had champs, he was bringing drinks and he was just doing so many things.
You're a socialite, yeah.
Right. And so I became that socialite. That was my personality. So when I showed up to school, I was always, well put together, loved the track and field life. And then I went into drama, right? You see the facial expression there.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Right? Then I went into drama and I did the JCDC thing where I would do speech, and I was into skits and I was into acting, and I really liked that. But when I went to fifth form, right, and the pressures of CXC and accomplishing all these things kind of just fell down on me. I'm gonna say it's not that I had 5 years to prepare for it. It just come overnight. Right?
I mean, you were busy living.
Yes, I was busy living.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had this enormous responsibility. And I think I realized quickly, right, that listen, Monefa, this procrastination, Monefa that's been going on for the last 5 years, had to ship out, and you had to shape up to become this person, because the Jamaican society is big on CXC and big on you accomplishing those things.
And so your ones.
And listen, and so I realized quickly that I couldn't just go and be mediocre, right? I had to accomplish something great. And I had some cousins and brothers that set some big example, right? Them get 8 subject and 9 subject and 9 ones, and it was really this, right? So I felt like I had to match, right?
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I lived up to the expectations, right?
So being this socialite, or being in a situation where people were always around, you were always entertaining, it always felt like you guys were just you were enjoying life, really.
Right.
You were living life to the fullest. When it came, because probably about 9th grade there, but you'd be contemplating, okay, what career choice, am I gonna be moving towards? What direction am I gonna be moving towards, so that I can start to prepare over 4th and 5th form to take these exams? Right. When it came time for you to think about that, considering you never grew up with limitations, you weren't really boxed in. What
Right.
were you thinking about as a
Listen,
career choice?
that's so funny, right? Because I can remember that conversation with my father like it was yesterday. Because when it came to the serious conversations, my father was the person that normally had that. Mom was very loving and nurturing. Anything you want to do, baby. Anything.
Oh, wow.
And daddy was the type of person that was like, no, it's not anything. You have to do something sensible. So I remember having that conversation, and I was in love with medicine, but
Wow.
I didn't like biology and I didn't like chemistry, right? But my father saw that I was a natural entrepreneur. Like I was just natural at it. I think in numbers. As soon as somebody starts to tell me an idea, my brain starts to just work in a different way. I start telling you, oh, you can make your little simple idea much better. And so, you know, my father was like, why don't you just do accounting? Like you're good at numbers, you're good with business. I feel like a business track would be good for you. At that point, I was doing home economics and I loved cooking. And I was like, well, maybe I could be a chef. And he was like, chef is good too. Like you can do that because you can have your own business and so on and so forth. So after a while, I started to, when I went into fourth form, I was doing a whole bunch of subjects. I was doing chemistry, I was doing bio. I was carrying a little heavier workload because I really wanted to choose the subjects that I thought I liked. I didn't want to just do everything. So immediately, maybe 2 months in, I realized that bio wasn't working for me. So I switched from bio and I did something else.
Oh, wow.
Jago allowed that. Listen, Jago allowed that, man. Jago allowed that, right?
Wow.
Because it wasn't a case where you could not do anything if you decided that you didn't want to do bio. So they allowed you to, okay, then if it's a case where you could change out, you don't want to do that subject. So they gave you an opportunity to do something.
Wow, that's nice.
It could also be because of who my father was.
Okay.
Well,
I mean.
So, but you know what? Jago fostered a lot of things, and they still foster a lot of things to this day. Right?
And ironically, you are in your Jago colors.
Of course. And it wasn't by plan, and it just accidentally happened. But green is one of my favorite colors. It promotes prosperity. Yeah. And so, you know, it represents my school. So I always represent, you know.
Love it.
Yeah.
In my heart, I went to St. Jago. My mother went to St. Jago. So I feel like there's some green and yellow down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. We accept you. We'll adapt you. You're an adopted Jago. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, and so I kind of was just led into that path of entrepreneurship where everything in my life, even the way my childhood was, my parents had a business. I worked in that business from as young as I could remember. My father had me counting coins, counting money, bagging flour, bagging rice, bagging sugar. You know, we all had to do something. It wasn't, even though the yard was one of them excitement yard where we have Olympics with crate and sandpit where we jump in and all of them excitement there, it still was a house or a yard of principle where if you go to that house and you really decide and you really never get nothing and you decide say you're not going to be anything in life, that was on you, but it was never a product of that place. Yeah. That place was, you know, 37 Jobs Lane was everything. And when you talk to some people, like even older people, like they say it all the time. They're like, listen, your yard changed my life, changed my life. And so you know, we kind of just that place kind of just destined me to this greatness.
To this greatness.
So
here you are, like learning how to balance work and life really from a young
Right.
age. You doing CXCs to go into the field of accounting because that is a look. I feel like you have a natural thing. Just go
Right.
on do it. And even if you like the chef thing, no problem, but you can have that another business, right? We
Right.
want
Right.
independence, we want to be able to sustain itself.
Right.
How did that translate when it was time to go to university?
Oh Lord. when we go to university now, right? Here's the thing. When I decided I wanted to go away to go to school, because I felt like my parents was a little bit overprotective. And so I kind of wanted to get out of their shadow. But my father, being who he was like, no, I don't think America is the right place for you. You know, I want you to, you're still so young, you're still so naive, stay here. I don't want you to go to foreign and get no student loan.
Wow.
Stay here where I can pay for college, right? No, I had friends who were, they were staying locally and they still had a student loan, right? So for me, hearing my parents say, listen, I don't want you to start off in a deficit. I want you to be accomplished. I want you to get your degree, and I don't want you to be in debt to get that degree, right? And so it made sense. Like, it absolutely made sense to me. And so I applied for UTech, I got in, and I went to Bizard, and it was just, you know, it was surprising. It was night and day, because I went to a high school where my father was known. My father was a St. James, right? And he was still very big in terms of giving to the school. He was big on parent teachers. He was the president of the Parent Teachers Association for a long time. And he was active. He was an active parent. And so even if I wanted to scholar class, I couldn't scholar the class, because everybody knew who I was. Every teacher looked for me. And now I went to college and nobody knew who I was.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yes.
I had a whole new set of friends that I was meeting. Majority of my friends went away to college because they got athletic scholarships and so on and so forth. And here I was, I had the CXCs. I didn't have a scholarship, but I had the CXCs. And I had parents who were willing to pay for me to go to school. So it made absolute sense. So now I had to find a whole new
identity.
I'm not going to say identity, because I really didn't start to understand identity until I left college.
Wow.
When I was in college, I was just looking again, my people, right? I was still very young. I went to college when I was 17. So I was still very young when I went to UTech. And it was a whole new world. I met some fabulous friends. Some of them I'm still friends with to this day. And they it was just a different world, right? I thought I was living before, but I wasn't living.
Oh,
I started living now. Because then I had the freedom to go to parties, I had the freedom to drink, I had the freedom to do all these things, to hang out late. Even though I really couldn't hang out late, but just think. We could have hung out late, it was an illusion. Because by 12:30, my parents would call and say, where are you? It's time for you to come home.
Yeah.
My mom's favorite thing was, why you have to stay out till dark, Fred? You never know after.
What time dark, Fred? What time?
Not 12:30 dark, Fred. Right?
Wow.
So it was an illusion that I had a freedom, but either way, I still, you know, my father would even bring me to parties, right? He would bring me. And when I carry got a party, and he would sleep in the car, or I would go with my aunt. Wow. And we would party, because she was a party animal, still is to this day. You know, so we would go to parties with her, and as long as I was going with her, it was fine.
Okay.
And then, you know, I kind of just realized that it doesn't matter where you are in life, as long as you love people, right? You'll always have people. It's not so much about what you can buy for them. It's not so much about what you can give to people, but it's how you love people, right? Giving to them naturally comes, right? Because when you love people, you want to see them better. You want to see them accomplish certain things. And so you give to them freely, unconditionally, because there is no condition to loving people when you're loving people. That's where I met your brother. I met your brother when I was in college. And we're still friends to this day. You know, he taught me something different about life, right? He taught me to love music. I had liked music, but to this day, because of your brother, every time I hear instruments play, if one instrument offbeat, me know.
You pick it up. Yep.
Right? And
yep.
So I kind of met different people, right? I met people that were on the same track that I was on. They wanted to be accountants. And so I kind of melded with those people a little more. And then I met other people who were just interested in becoming business persons. They were interested in becoming doctors, IT people, musicians. So I had all these different,
so many people,
right? So many worlds being thrown at me, right? And you know, I didn't understand that I was a chameleon then, but I was able to fit into all those worlds. I was able to navigate. I was always able to navigate those worlds and still know who Monefa was.
Who was Monefa in that moment, though?
In that moment, Monefa was.
I feel like in high school, a part of you was like a byproduct of your father's presence, right? So, well, you can tell me whether or not that kind of heightened or, suppressed certain parts of you, because you always know there's somebody looking at the telephone.
Right.
But by the time you got to college, being in a space where, nobody don't know Mr. White, nobody cares about that connection anyway.
Right.
You have to now kind of create your own little identity.
Right.
Who were you in that moment?
Right. In that moment, I was Monefa, the carefree spirit. I just felt like I was so young, I could have accomplished anything. I was in a place where nobody knew me, so I could be anybody I wanted to be at any given time of the day, right? I could be Monefa, a successful entrepreneur. I could be Monefa, a sketel. Right? But that's the truth. I have to put it like that, right? So I was a carefree spirit, right? I don't think I really figured out an identity while I was in college. I don't think I had an identity. What I knew was that I knew that I had the ability to do lots of things. And so while I was meeting people and sharing their experiences and enjoying, I was just learning. Learning different cultures, different people. And I quickly realized that not everybody grew up the way that I grew up, right? I quickly realized that there were persons who were coming from single family homes where it was just their mother alone doing everything. And so their success was, they had to succeed, right? If they didn't succeed, it would have been a disappointment. They would have been a failure. And those pressures caused them to be much different than I was, right? And then I realized that there were persons who were there that they were self-made. There were no parents. They were much older. And what they realized was that education was something that they wanted for themselves. And so they worked, and then they came back to do the college experience, and they were older and they had much life experience to share with us younger folks. And so in that time, I was really just absorbing everything. I was like a sponge, right? I was a sponge in high school, but I was a bigger sponge now. I was absorbing everything, right? I was learning so many different things about life. I spent a lot of time playing domino, drinking white rum sometimes.
You could skull class freely at this point.
I could, yes, I could skull class freely.
Yeah.
And nobody really cared if I skull class or not, because if I failed, then I would have to find the money to resit the class. And I remember that after that first semester was done, I barely passed the first semester.
Wow.
And you know, my father asked me for my report card. And I was like, Daddy, they don't give report card. And at that point, he was like, well, in this house, you need a report card. So I need to see what you do. And I remember I gave him it and he was like, what happened? What's going on? Like, I need to tighten up on you, right? I need to draw the belt. And then he had a real heart-to-heart with me, right? He said it very simply. He said, so many of your friends are taking student loans to go to school. I am paying for this out of my pocket. All I'm asking you to do is to succeed, is to do your best at it, right? If you did your best and you still fail, then I'm still proud of you because you did your best. But if you're not doing your best, right? If you're just being mediocre at this, then you're truly a disappointment. Like, I'm disappointed.
Wow.
And you know, that conversation lasted with me. And so I kind of shape up myself. And I realized that, you know what, Monefa, nobody's saying that you can't procrastinate, but you also have to be serious. When it's time to be serious, you have to be serious. And so I went through and, you know, I met some great people. I had a professor by the name of Roger Brown, and I can't forget that man. I remember one time he said to us, you need to gangsterize the flex.
What that mean?
And it just simply meant that, listen, if you're gonna idle all year, then there has to be a point when you're going to get serious with your book, and you're going to gangsterize it. You're going to study it, because a gangster know him area, and if somebody new come in on him turf, him know, right? And that's what it means. Listen, get your book. You have to know your book, understand the theories, and apply yourself accordingly. You have to survive. That's what a gangster does. A gangster survives.
Yeah.
And so I immediately learned from Mr. Brown that I had to figure out how to gangsterize the flex, right? I had to figure out how to balance being this socialite and party person with being this academia, right? With being able to accomplish that.
How did your entrepreneurial skill set or your entrepreneurial muscle get flexed during? Oh, it didn't. During
that time, but then I think nothing about no business.
What?
I mean, the only business I was thinking about was like my parents' business and like, you know, how can I help them to improve based on what I was learning? So I kind of took over the accounting of my father's business. Okay. And so that's where I got a lot of my experiences, right? I learned how to, you know, manage a general ledger and you know, manage payroll and understand taxes. And that's what I was studying. So I kind of feel like I had a foot up in that situation because I was actively doing it every day and every week. So I wasn't really entrepreneur then either. And I can admit this, I didn't admit it until very later on, until I moved here. And my father passed away. I didn't admit to myself, I didn't accept to myself that I had a real big problem with entrepreneurship until then, because my parents were, even though they were entrepreneurs, they couldn't leave their business. They were stuck in their business,
practice.
and I didn't like that. So even though everybody was like, "Oh, you have this entrepreneur mindset," and it was something that I was running
That
from.
was a negative connotation that was attached to it.
Listen,
Because yeah, say, but if me turn entrepreneur, that means to make us stuck in our business.
we can't go nowhere, and all of those things, and that was a very big. It was a very big problem. I don't think problem is the right word, but for
you
the
couldn't wrap around that mindset.
It was a struggle for me. The struggle was real, right? Because I felt like, okay, how is it possible that you work and you have money and you can't go nowhere? That just blew my mind. I couldn't understand it, right? And then, so for that reason, even though it was a natural thing for me, I didn't really like it, because I felt like when it was time to have my family, that it would have been a problem, right? It would have been a big deal. Like, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't vacation together. I remember our family vacations was once a year, and it was Easter weekend, because everything shut down in Jamaica. And so my father would bring us to Ocho Rios, and we would just have a good time. And we would leave Holy Thursday, so we would go down to Ochi for Good Friday. And it was Choco Cove weekend. So we would go to Choco Cove, and we would be in Ocho Rios, and we would spend time with his friends. He had some friends down there, and sometimes his fraternity brothers would come from abroad. And we would spend the time there, and that was our only family vacation together as mother, father, brother, sister,
and being in a space where like your freedom was important to you, being carefree. You grew up that way. So to transition into entrepreneurship, this thing over here that's important to me. I don't want to sacrifice that.
And so when I finished college, the first thing I did was jump on a plane and came to the United States, right? Because this is my life's confession, right? Because I didn't want to be trapped in that shop.
Wow.
Yes. I don't think any of my parents knew that, right?
That right there is a
it's a hard issue, right? I didn't want to be stuck in that shop. I started to, in fourth year, I started to imagine my life. And I was like, oh my God, my father was shaping me up to take over the business, and I was like, take over business. Well,
did you have a conversation with your parents before you left? And what was that like? Because for many children who grow up in the family business and they know that, okay, I'm going to take over the family business, even if they don't want to, it's usually something that it's inevitable. You don't really have a choice. Your parents are banking on you. You are their investment so that you can come back and give to the family business. What was that like?
Surprisingly, we didn't have a conversation.
What?
We didn't have a conversation. I remember my grandfather had filed for us, and we all had our papers and stuff. And so when college was over, I kind of was just like, hey, I think I'm going to spend summer in the US. And, when I came for the summer, and while I was here, I was like, well, I think I'm going to stay a little longer. And then I found a job. And so I started working.
So happened. So in your mind, you don't know it already, but to your parents, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
You think your father knew?
I think he knew. He wanted me to come back home. I actually didn't graduate from UTech, right? I finished, I got my diploma and everything, but I didn't went to the graduation ceremony. And he wanted me to come home for graduation. And I just got this job and I was like, I can't come and so on and so forth. And I felt like he was heartbroken for that, right? And so he kept on encouraging me at that point. Hey, start your master's. Don't delay. Start your master's. I will help you in any way I can. Start your master's. Just get into it. So, I didn't have the conversation, but I think he knew that.
Were you scared to have the conversation?
It wasn't, huh?
Were you scared to have the conversation?
I was. I felt like I was going to be a disappointment.
Wow.
And I have a big thing with disappointed people. I don't like to be a disappointment. So I felt really, I was really worried about it. I didn't have the it was one of those things that you kind of dance around.
Yeah.
And so every time, if the conversation came up, it would be like dancing around. Like,
growing up in such a big family, like, even if the pressure didn't come from your dad particularly, like, nobody else asked you about, like, what you wanted to do. What would you say to them?
Everybody's, you know what? Because of how active I was in the business, I think everybody just assumed that that's what I would have done. So it wasn't really a conversation in terms of what I would do. It was this expectation that I was going to do this thing. And so, when I came here, I think people's expectations started to change, right? They started to realize that I wasn't, that I didn't really want to do that. And nobody really addressed it. They kind of just, when them look on you with a side bro kind of thing, almost waiting to see when you're gonna come to your senses. And it kind of just never happened.
That's a word. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of just never happened. I went onto this entirely different path, right? I started off here working in a call center, and working in the call center environment, I really had to change a lot of things about myself. I'm a very direct person, so I found myself apologizing a lot, telling people I'm sorry. And that was very strange for me because I didn't grow up in a house where I had to say I'm sorry a lot of times. My parents...
There was open communication.
Yeah, we had open communication. And so there was this level of, I don't want to call it deceit, but there was this level of, okay, this is the way we do business, but this is the way we need you to portray business.
Hypocrisy is what
that's the word. Hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a culture shift that's happening, like just by the transition, and you for me in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed singing that, listen, I'm gonna just get these coins, when they're like, no, we don't communicate like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when I was making notes in the in the policies, right, in the different customer charts, the writing was different. Everybody's writing and it's short, and I'm writing. Thus, I told the customer.
A book report, right?
Hence. And so it turned out to be this big thing, right? And then I quickly realized that wasn't going to work for me. And that's when I met, oh my God, I can't remember his name. His name is Dexter Johnson. I met Dexter at that time. And Dexter was he's from Trinidad. He's from Trinidad. Dexter was a Trinidadian. And so, we had a conversation one day by the coffee machine. And then, he was like, I know your accent, you're Jamaican. And then we start talking as Caribbean people. And, I told Dexter, I'm not, this is just my first job. And he's like, this is your first job ever. And no, I told him my backstory, told him where I was coming from, and that I had my degree in accounting. And so Dexter was the head of the business analyst unit at that time.
Wow.
And so, he was like, listen, let me see what I can do. I don't have an opening on my team right now, but I'll keep you in mind should an opening come up. And so I was there for 2.5 years waiting for an
Wow.
opening, right? And Mr. Johnson did something that not a lot of people did. Not a lot of people would do. He said, you know what, Monefa, I don't know if an opening is ever going to come up. And I would hate to see you waste your talent in a call center, right?
Wow.
And so he was like, where are you on your master's? And I said, I only had maybe like a half a year left, like 6 months left to complete. And so he said to me, I'm gonna do this for you. Send over your resume. I'm gonna fix your resume up. I'm gonna clean up your resume, fix your resume. We're gonna reduce this call center thing because that's the only real experience you have here. But we're gonna word it differently. And so he taught me how to change my resume. And he was like, you don't have any experience. Why do you have 2 pages? You only need a 1-page resume.
Yeah.
And so he basically summarized everything I did in Jamaica, placed it under my father's company. And then he summarized everything into 5 bullet points that I was doing at this call center, right? And then he said, put your resume out there and start looking jobs. Like, do not waste any time.
Is important because many times you go to work for a company, they are just looking about their agenda. We need manpower. So to find someone who's like, look, you're gonna waste your time if you stay here.
Yes.
So you can be so much better. That alone, even if you have confidence in your ability, because oftentimes we feel like, so, okay, when we're starting off, we have to start off from the bottom. We have to learn.
Right.
And, a call center job is easy entry, easy exit.
Right.
But to have someone kind of spot you out, that must have boosted you internally.
Yes.
Say, look, outside, even though I grew up with people, so many people around my parents validating what I'm doing, telling me I'm great. It's nice to have someone outside of that.
Yes.
Push me to do something else. Push me to be better than here, where I was currently.
Right. And then and so that's how my career that's how my career started, and that's how it still is to this day.
Wow.
When I left that call center job, I got a job as a payroll compliance analyst, right?
What?
Young girlie, and I know nothing about payroll. I know taxes.
That's a jump.
And accounting, right?
Yeah.
So from call center to analyst.
Yeah.
And I went into that job and I met 2 of the most influential people in my life outside of my parents.
Wow.
And my boss, Lynn. Lynn saw me for the true young woman that I was, right? And that lady really spent a lot, like she started to just push me into everything. So she was like, listen, there's a management meeting. I want you to go to this meeting. We're working on a special project. It's yours. And she was just like literally just started pouring into me. And then I met in that I met a VP of software development at that time, Rob Bream. And so when I met Rob, right, Rob was like, okay, all right. And so Rob became my personal mentor, right? He wasn't interested in he was interested in Monefa, right? He was interested in Monefa. And so Rob started to teach me majority of the things that I know about finance today, about managing my own personal finances. Even though a lot of that came from my parents, I think navigating the real world now, a lot of those things came from Rob. And he was like, listen, you need to learn to create a legacy for yourself, something that your children will have. And your parents did a good job, but here is what you need to do. Like, you need to create passive income streams. You need to, even though this is your 9 to 5, it doesn't need to be your all. You need to push yourself, right? You need to enjoy life. You need to take vacations. You need to make sure that you're healthy. And like, this guy like really started to like, Monefa, like he was one of the first persons to ask me, what makes you happy?
Wow.
And me couldn't answer. I couldn't answer. I didn't know what made me happy. And so I was there, and every 3 months he would come back to that question.
Wow. So at what point, well, I multiple questions, but at what point were you able to answer that one?
I wasn't able to answer that question until after my father passed. I realized that family made me. I realized that spending time with my family, being around people made me happy. And so even though my happiness wasn't tied to like a tangible thing, it really had to do with having people around me. And so, you know, when my father passed away and my mom and my sister and my nephew came to live with me here, I really realized that I wasn't as sad as I thought I was going to be, because I had people, you know, and that really changed my life, right? And then I learned life lesson. I call it life lesson number 28. Stay in your own lane.
Hey, that is my favorite. Okay, my lane over here.
My lane.
So, right?
Stay in my lane.
When I feel like I get caught up on my business, what them do with the road? Them whitewash the road, them take the lawn and mow it, them plant a like a palm tree. My lane over here, so I love that.
Yeah. I learned that life lesson at 28. So at 28, I learned that life lesson number 28 is money for stay in your own lane. You don't have to do anything according to anybody's rule, right? And so at that point, I had finished my master's in taxation, and I had this huge master's. I didn't really know what to do with it. I went to school. I had this accounting degree. I didn't really know what to do with it. I had this master's in taxation, and I didn't really know what to do with it.
And you had your analyst job.
I had my payroll analyst job, and I loved payroll. I loved to understand money, how money move, how money work. And then my eyes was open to the fact that you could have somebody who's a data entry clerk making $60,000, right? And you could have an administrative assistant making $100,000. And you see these job titles, and then you see these dollar, right? And you see these dollar values being placed beside them, and you're like, what's the difference between a data entry clerk and an administrative assistant? What, you know?
And oftentimes, like at least at starting off, they would have gotten about the same amount.
Right. And then the difference you would see is like an executive administrative assistant. And so I found myself in this world of payroll compliance where my boss threw me in that world because I had a master's in taxation. So I could read and interpret the IRS code. And that's what they really needed to make their business succeed, right?
Wow.
So I was doing this very big job, right? I was doing this very big job, and I was reasonably compensated for it. But then I started to want more. I started to want more. And so I was volunteering. I was feeding the homeless. I was just doing all these things with my life. And then I realized once I found my lane and I went into that lane, and I realized that payroll was a big thing for me, that, you know, I understood it, I know it, and I could be successful at it. I decided that you know what, I'm going to stay in that niche because I think that's my little niche. And I could advise small businesses on something that they don't normally, like a small business when they start out, they're not thinking about payroll, right?
Yeah. That's not
they're
like
just thinking about making some
to me.
money. Yeah. And then I realized that I had this ability to inspire people, one, and two, I had garnered this skill set that would help small businesses. And I think it would have been something where if, you know, with everything that I know now, I could have stepped into my parents' business and not be as into the business as they were. And I feel like that was what they were missing. And so now when I meet young people or I meet any business person and they tell me that, you know, they have their own personal business and their goal is they want to be an entrepreneur because they feel like it's going to give them better work-life balance. A lot of times I want to scream and say, no,
listen,
that's a lie.
You don't, yeah.
But it can, right? But you have to put the right systems and tools in place to make sure that it did that, right? That it does that, right?
So,
and then I left there and I went to where I am now. And so now I'm working for a university.
What?
Yeah. So I'm a payroll tax manager at a prominent university in South Florida. And while I was there, my boss there threw me into HR. So I started learning about workers' compensation and benefits and you know, the hiring and onboarding process and HR policies and stuff like that. And somewhere in that process, I got this crazy idea to go back and study employment law because that's what we need.
So on the side, like taking Rob's, you know, advice and putting it into action, you are now consulting small businesses.
I am. So I created Momatic Solutions out of, you know, so that I could help small businesses grow, right? Every time I learn something new, I try to share that with I try to share that with the small businesses. I'm not in this, it's shameful to say that I'm not in this business for money. And it's
why is that shameful?
Huh?
Why is that shameful?
Because nobody in a business gonna make money.
I mean, no.
So I'm really not, you know, if I make money along the way, that is awesome. But truthfully, I feel like my gift, my God-given gift, right, is to help businesses and to help not just businesses, but to help people, right, get to where they need to be. And so when I created Momatic Solution, the idea behind it was that, I wanted to make money. I wanted it to be a passive income stream, one where I would work less and just make more. And then I quickly realized that I didn't really want to be making anything. You know, I really wanted people, young women, Black women, to, when they start their business, be successful at it. Because for years, we have been struggling with that. Like we can start something, but to make it run long term, we kind of, when we start having children or we meet our husbands, if they don't necessarily buy into our vision, then our vision kind of goes on the wayside, right? Or put it on the back seat, right? And then I realized that, listen, if I start to help people to put systems in place and structures in place that will allow their business to run all the time without them having to be in it all the time, that, you know, that it could work, that we could have the 3 children running around, be the soccer mom, be this entrepreneur and have this work-life balance and still bring your kids to Disney and
still
go
be
to
financially secure, still
Right.
getting, fulfillment from that aspect of your life. Yeah, I love that. And you just said who go in business, but when you're giving back, that's really where the love of doing something, the love of sharing the knowledge, the love of seeing someone else get enlightenment is more than what's earned. And that's where your purpose really comes out. Like
that's where joy comes. That's what makes you happy.
Joy.
Right? Because happiness will
come and go.
Absolutely. Happiness will really, you see, when you're happy at what you're doing, working 12 hours really don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
When you're happy at what you're doing. When you enjoy what you're doing, right? Then you get happiness from that.
Yeah.
And so lots of things happen, lots of life struggles happened along that path. Like Momatic Solution didn't just happen and it was great, right?
How did that name come about?
Momatic Solution,
yes.
Girl.
Bomatics. That sounds like bombastic.
Listen, so if I tell you how it comes out, you can't laugh. Please. It's no laughing.
Okay.
So my name is Monefa, right? But I didn't want my name to be in a business. I didn't want it to be Monefa's Solution, right? So I took the Mo from me, right?
Yeah.
And then Matics, I was thinking about mathematics.
Don't tell me that. I never promised you that I wouldn't laugh. I just wow.
And that's how the name came about. The name came about. The concept is that Mo and with a mathematical mind can provide you a solution.
Got it.
So that's how Mo.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
And the only person it did need to make sense to was
is you.
Because it is in my lane.
Yeah.
Right.
Understood.
Yes.
So, okay. So here you are, having your master's in taxation, having your 9-to-5, having Momatic Solutions, doing some charity work and volunteering and giving back. At what point along this path did you realize that you wanted to start a podcast?
Oh, Heart Walks. Oh, let's talk about Heart Walks for a little bit. Oh my goodness. So I always wanted to do a podcast because I feel like I have a radio. Right? So I always wanted to do a podcast because I felt like, I had so much to say.
Mm-hmm.
But Heart Walks really didn't come to life until I lost my mom a year and a half ago to cancer. And in that season, after I lost my father, in that season I went deep into my faith. The song that says, "On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand." That song was literally the testament of my life every day. It was
wow.
It was the ground on which I stood, right? Because when my father passed away, I lost a big chunk of my world.
Wow.
There was this financial security that existed when my father was there. Like I always knew that if me ever did need a little change, I could have just call my father and he would have sent a little thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he passed away, I really had to find a different father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just realized that an earthly father wasn't going to cut it. I needed a heavenly father.
Wow.
So I went deep into my faith at that time. Studying the word, just praying every day. And that significantly changed my life. And so when my mom got her cancer diagnosis, it was really painful, but it wasn't as bad as I think it could have been, because I had already mourned the loss of one parent, so I kind of understood. And I was super optimistic, right? I cut off all my hair with her in solidarity. We were doing the chemotherapy. We were doing it all, right? I went vegan in that season as well, because I was like, listen, anything to save mom's life, right? And so in that season, I started writing a lot of things. And so Heart Walks originally started out as a written blog where I was talking about waiting seasons, and I was talking about different seasons that I was walking through, and different things and different experiences that I was walking through. And I started writing them down, and I would share them, and people would be commenting on it, like random strangers that I don't know from nowhere, because I had it on WordPress.
Yeah.
And people would like comment on it and, like say, you're truly an inspiration. Like,
wow.
I can't believe that you would be so vulnerable, with how you're feeling. And then mom passed away and I couldn't write stuff anymore.
Wow.
I felt like my head had so many thoughts in them that I didn't really know how to write it down on paper. So I started walking outside, and I was exercising, and I would just use that time to talk to God. And, I would tell him how I was feeling. I would tell him, if I was disappointed today, I would just be honest and say, God, I'm disappointed. The pandemic was just ramping up, and there was just so much chaos and confusion in my life. And one day, I was talking to a friend. I was like, I feel like I want to start a podcast. She found this app. She said she's going to do her own podcast as well. And she was like, Mo, I think you should try this app. Like, I recorded something. I'm going to put it out there. It's my podcast. It sounds good. You should try it. And so Keto Yardi sent me the anchor link and was like, try this. I think it will work. And so I translated my walks that I was having and talking to God into actual conversations that I was having with myself. I started it out by always, praying to invite God's presence into it. And then I ended it by praying for those who were listening. Because I felt like, it had 10 years from now, something that I said in the middle of a pandemic has this ability to change somebody's life, and I wanted people to know that they weren't alone. That you weren't alone, that the silence, because it was really tough, even though my house wasn't silent, because like I said, I had stolen a lot of people and infused them into my life and kidnapped them into my house. So them, even though them didn't want to leave and go up on them own, them kind of did stuck with me.
Yeah.
So I find myself doing a lot of things that my parents did, where I'm always trying to kidnap people's kids. And I'm always surrounding.
For those who are watching and listening, kidnap is used loosely.
Yes, please. Yes, please. I have no kids of my own. You can come back for them whenever you like. I don't really keep toddlers for too long. But I have some conditions around the kidnapping. So I guess maybe it's not a kid.
You're borrowing them.
Yes, I'm borrowing
them, and they can be returned.
Yes, they can. Yes. And if they cry a lot, they are returned to someone.
You call it, look here, come a minute.
Yes, listen, come and collect your little one. Your tiny human is not participating. So, but yeah, And then I kind of just realized that I love doing it. I love talking to people. I haven't recorded in a little while because I did not anticipate um going to school and doing a second master's to be this hard.
Wow.
I find myself, I have to read anywhere from like 20 to 30 cases per semester, and I'm not talking about short cases, because employment law cases aren't usually short. They're usually like civil cases or cases where it's class action cases. So it includes a lot of plaintiffs, a lot of judges, a lot of federal rules and changes like in FSLA laws, and so it's a lot of reading.
And reading is one part, but then the comprehension and then the analysis
and then the application, right? Because not every case is applicable to every situation, right? And so I've learned a lot of things. I've learned some things even from like a small business perspective, right? Where we have a lot of small business out there that don't have an employee guide because they feel like, oh, I only have 10 people working for me. It's just a small business. But, the federal rules and regulation is that once you have more than 5 persons working for you, you need to have an employment book. You need to have rules around PTO. You need to have rules around workers' compensation. You need to have rules around benefits. You need to have something written if these people are employees that you're paying and you're paying taxes for. You need to have rules around just their basic business operation, what is expected behavior, what constitutes harassment.
Was it yesterday was Sexual Sharp Awareness Day? Yeah. That's
right.
thing.
Yeah. So and I feel like a lot of small businesses today, they don't really think about that, right?
No.
And that's the vision that we should have when our business is growing. And so, I was talking to a friend who has an electrical company, and I was saying to him, listen, right now you only have 3 people working for you, right? But you want to grow your business. So here is the mindset that you need to know. If I'm going to grow my business, then I need to have rules for my employee. I need to have rules for myself. I need to have guidelines. I need to have policies surrounding why I pay myself $1.2 million, but I only pay these other 5 people $40,000 a year. So it comes down to equality when you're working. Why would I hire a man over a woman and stuff like that? Those are things that we don't think about, right? They're kind of innate to us. We have a business, and guess what? You know what? I feel like I work better with women, so I'm only going to hire women for my business. I'm not going to hire any men in my business. But, a guy or a male person could come on and in their mind, you have violated them. You've violated them from a gender perspective. Because the company is all women. Why wouldn't you be interested in hiring men? So it's stuff like that.
Interesting. You don't really think about that though. Like people just know, say, oh, I want to start a business and I want to make money. All of the in between, we'll just figure it out. Like I hire you. You must know how to operate in a business. You must know how to say what is good and what's acceptable and what's not.
Right.
Not realizing that, look, don't take those things for granted because people come from different backgrounds. You need to clearly state and specify and reiterate what is acceptable behavior and what is required.
Yeah. And we Jamaican people, we quick on with tongue.
Yeah.
And as soon as I say something, your head big like this, or you know, and sometimes we make some comments and we don't realize that they isolate people, or they could be considered slurs, negative slurs, that could hurt somebody's feelings. That, and if you say it every day for 6 months, that you could be harassing this person, that you could be creating a hostile work environment for somebody else.
That's a word, right? Because it just reminds you to be self-aware of what's going on.
So I learned all these
went
things.
off on a tangent from Heartworks, and you say that you have not recorded in a while. Do you plan to go back?
Yes. I went to I took a vacation last year, and I drafted what was supposed to be the end of season 1 for Heartworks. I think I did 8 recordings for Heartworks, and that was supposed to be the 9th recording to end season 1 of Heartworks. And so I spent some time the other day, and I kind of drafted out where I wanted Heartworks to go. So I now feel like what I recorded, what I drafted to be the end of season 1, I'm just gonna let season 1 kind of just hang out there like a cliffhanger, like Shonda Rhimes style. And then I'm just gonna start season 2 with a bang.
Yeah.
So I drafted up most of season 2 already, and I'm trying to put a plan together. So when I have a downtime, I want to just schedule everything in that 2-week gap and record everything. Yeah, and kind of just have season 2 of Heartworks be something different and something special.
So I have to tell you, I would be remiss if we did not have this conversation and I did not share with you how much of an inspiration you have been for me, right? Personally. And it's only now that I'm in my 30s and kind of looking back, and you touched on like when you were in your absorption phase, you were a sponge, you're just taking everything in. That in you saying that I kind of click back and make the connection, and I'm like, okay, when we met, I would have been probably around 15, 16, thereabouts. Yeah. And I was in absorption phase at that moment. I'd never seen entrepreneurship in real life at that point. My family work philosophy was go to school, get a job, die.
Right.
I've never seen anything else outside of that, or even experienced life outside of that. Mm-hmm. And so by just being who you are, by just moving the way you move, by having that open, household where you come in, you explain your family to me.
Right.
Like, that to me gave me such a different perspective on the world, that I realized that this other avenue was there. This other avenue was available. Yeah. And like led me years later to attempt like several entrepreneurial feats.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would have started it, because I don't think after that point, if I'm honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I have not, with the exception of my husband, I was not exposed to it after that.
Right.
So it put me in a space mentally where I was able to pick it up. Yes, you're seeing other people, like I'm reading books and I'm watching other people out there doing it.
Right.
Inspired. But in my circle, it wasn't. And you weren't even intentionally trying to do that. You were just being yourself. But for me, I was already getting this exposure. I was already in JCDC. I was already having this world, like
thrown at you. Yeah.
This was something that I took in. My brain just said, all right, we're not ready to process that yet, but I want to lock it away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were that person.
And that's how it is a lot of times with me, right? one of my friends called me a dumpster. I'm this type of person where you'll tell me that you're doing something and all these inspirations come to me about what you're doing. And I will dump it on you. Like, I will just call you and we'll have like a 45-minute conversation and I'm just dumping and dumping and dumping. Now, I tell this is the disclaimer to those conversations. You have to write what I say down. Yeah. If you don't write it down, it's your loss. Because 9 times out of 10, nah, remember when I said to you.
Right? That's not even your doing. That's a transmission. You're just the vessel.
Right.
Because you're tapping into that source and the fact that you care about that person.
Right.
So by the time you're sharing all this information, like we've been on, like, first and foremost, I don't think I've ever had a 10-minute conversation with you. There's no such thing.
No.
10-minute is either you're not gonna call me for months, or we're not gonna call it for months, or we're just gonna have an hour and a half. Right?
Right. Yeah.
That's just how it is. But in that moment, it's like, oh my, did I think about that? Yo, I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh, and I'm sure you hear that all the time. I'm like,
yes. And that's how it is. And people who know me accept me for that. So that's one of my shortcomings. I don't keep in contact all the time. So I'm not.
Life is happening.
Right.
That's fine.
Right. I'm one of those persons that you will not hear from me for like 2, 3, 6 months, and then I call you, and we talk about everything. Where are you with life? Where are you on, with accomplishing your goals? Where are you with family? Where are you with business? Mm-hmm. And we talk about everything, and I give you everything you need to get, and then we're gone for another 6 months.
Yeah.
But that's kind of just who I am, and the more I accept that I'm that type of person, is the better it is. Because for a long time, I had tried to keep up with friendships and keep up with stuff, right? And I struggled with that because I was going so fast with so many different things.
Yeah.
Right?
So many plates juggling.
Right. And not only that, like I said, I dump a lot on people. Not necessarily my circumstances, but inspiration. I will fill you up. So I'm a pourer. I'll pour into you. And if I'm not careful, I'll find myself pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring all the time. And then I take no time to recover, right? So what I have to do is I have times when I have my different people that I pour into, and if you need a little more, because it depends on where you are on your journey, right? Because I remember there were times when we were talking like every week, like we would literally talk every week. And then there was another time when I wouldn't talk to you for a while, and you would only call when you're like, oh, let me bounce this idea off you. Yeah. Or I would call to say, hey, I need you to do something for me. Or whatever. And it was like that. And then, so it depends on what you need in the time when I meet you. I give based on that need, but I also realized, right, with staying into my lane, that when I let people in my lane, because we have to do that, right? We're not the only person on the road, but we have our own lane.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you may need to let somebody in your lane to pass you so that they can go ahead and pave the way, right? Maybe one part will if you then drop in a minute. Or maybe
detour.
Yeah, or maybe they're there to stop and put on their flashing light so you know that, hey, listen, danger is ahead. Or maybe them just need to pass your sake. Them need to go ahead, right? But whatever it is, when you let people in your lane, they take from you. Because to let somebody over in your lane mean that you have to slow down. Cars can always come behind you. But when you're letting someone in your lane to go ahead of you, right? It means that you have to slow down. It means you have to slow down. You have to stop. You lose momentum in the end, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to lose momentum forever. And it's important that when you let people in your lane, that they don't come and drive slow in front of you. Right?
That's a word.
Yeah. So you have to be careful of who you let in your lane. Right? And it's not that you want to hold people back. And I feel like that's a big problem for us now, where people end up holding people back because they're like, oh, I don't want to let anybody in front of me because they may slow me down.
Wow.
So you can always come in behind me, right? Because I'm driving. But if I have to let you in my lane to pass me, if I have to pull over for you to pass me, then that's a problem. But when you get to a certain level, when you get to a certain level of comfort within yourself, a certain level of comfort within your business, you realize that the more people that grow, the more people that you allow to pass you and they grow and become something, is the better it is. Because as my father used to say, well, drop off a head, drop on shoulder.
And
a lot of time people
will give something back.
Yeah, and a lot of time people feel like that it has its negative side, but it also has its positive side in terms of pouring into people, right? When you pour into, the idea is whatever it is, whatever blessings that they have received, and you're not working for blessings for yourself. Let me make sure that I put that out there now. It's your children's children that you're blessing. It's your children's children that you're doing this thing for. And so when you start to approach life differently, you start to approach business differently. When you do your business out of love, right? People come and when I started out, it was all about the money, right? It was like, listen, this is my fee. You either can accept it or you can't. You're either gonna accept it and accept my help, or you're gonna.
Or you can't. Just let me know. No discounts, no coupons.
Yeah. And then I quickly realized that, I had like there was this 1 month where I made like 10 grand in the month. Right, I had like 5 people sign on with me, and they all paid their $2,000 retainer, and I made this money, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm bowling,
yes,
right? And then I realized that I set up these businesses. I gave them what they needed, to move to really get their business up and running. And I connected them with, different people, different skill sets that I thought their business needed, and I helped them. And then they were gone, and I was empty. I was empty. I was like, well.
What's that?
And so I had to go out, and then I had to find new clients, and I had to do it all over again. And so it was like, okay. And then I created like this longevity thing, right? So I started to form friendships instead of partnerships. Right. And so I created this environment where all the entrepreneurs that I engaged with, whether you were paying me or not, I would still give you the advice, but for free, because guess what? What I know is that when you are successful, the economy is better. People are better. And the more people that are successful, the more of my people that are successful, right? Is the more likely people are to tell people about you. And so it wasn't like, oh, here's your 1 month thing and you get what you want. It was this continual thing. I have people calling me now that they find out that I'm doing employment law. They're like, hey, I have this question about this, and I'm like, oh, well, you need to do that, and that. And they're like, well, can you help me? And now they're volunteering to give me that.
They say you never sign up for that part.
Now they're volunteering to give me their money. Now they're like, oh, all right, then I know there has to be a fee for doing this.
Mhm.
What would it cost for you to do this, and this for me?
Mhm.
And so my business module changed,
I
right?
know.
It wasn't me running them down for money and saying, well, if you don't pay me, I'm not going to do this. Now it's them realizing the value that I bring to their business, the value add that I am. And
it's
they
also
offer to pay me.
to the kinds of people that you're attracting to, because there are people out there who, if you're giving it free, they're not going to tell you that you're valuable. They're not going to tell you, you should charge for this. They're getting it free.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a testament to the quality of people who, in themselves, would be like, look, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking this information from you for free. Let me pay you something.
Right. And it's not just that, you can give information, but it's putting it together.
Yeah.
So when they realize that the putting it together part is not as easy, they're like, at this point, you know what? I will pay you to do this because you've given me this information. I process it, but I still don't know how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
So I need you to help me to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of just where I am. And, when it comes to investing my time, when it comes to putting my time, obviously there's a cost associated with it, but it's not so much about the money. If you say you don't have it, I would never say, well, I'm not going to do this thing, or you won't get this thing. It would never be that. You understand what I'm saying?
Understand.
So yeah. And I try to encourage, when I meet young people who are going into business, I try to encourage them about that piece too. I say to them, go into business to impact people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you impact people, you have to make profits.
Wow. So, you have dropped a lot of nuggets. You have given both myself and those who are watching a lot to think about in general, and just in terms of life and your experience, but your approach to business and what you believe is the ultimate profit or the ultimate area of fulfillment, which is the development of other people or pouring into other people. And you have so many things that you're trying to balance right now, but I would say in the grand scheme of things, what do you think is next for you? What do you think is that next move, that next space that is calling you?
Right. So I feel like I've spent so much time in business. My next phase is really family. That's kind of where I am. I have a great job that allows me flexibility to do what I want to do, right? I'm sort of kind of on the track to go into becoming a professor at the university. So I'm working on that. So that's in the next chapter as well.
Nice.
Yeah, but the next chapter really is about having my own little rugrats. Having my own little rugrats. Really focusing on doing some of the slower things in life, like working on the podcast and really just getting the podcast to a good place where I'm recording all the time and I'm putting out content all the time. But when I close my eyes and see it, it involves probably having a baby or two, and really kind of just coming a little bit out of the professional world, taking right now I have both feet, my feet in the professional world, both feet. Miss Monroe would be shamed. Miss Monroe would say, what kind of English that? Right? So it's about taking out one of my foot and going on the side of having my own kids and imparting some of this wonderful knowledge that that my parents gave to me to a little me. or a little him. But yeah, when I close my eyes and I think about it, it's a little less professional and a little more family. And I applaud young people that do that, that's able to really balance it out and do the family and do.
I don't know if it's a balance yet. It's order.
No, man, it is a balance, because here's the thing. You get to a certain age and then you realize that you're pressing up against 40, right? And you don't have any kids. And you know, you have all these accomplishments, you have all these you know, diplomas on the wall of your academic, you know, accomplishments, or and then you kind of realize that you sacrificed, and I don't necessarily feel like it's a sacrifice, but then you kind of realize that there was this other world that you could have been a part of, that you weren't a part of, because you were trying to be all these great things, and you can be all these great things and still have those great things as well. But you know, it kind of come down to that, and then now you're like, I want to have kids, you know, I want to have two little ones just running around, and I want to do the soccer mom thing. Yeah, you want to do the soccer mom thing.
Like, you know, that's something that you will get to experience. I have no doubt all in the time. And then tutus, you saying them pitney and mad me.
Yeah, I might call and be like, listen, them coming up to see you here, because them a little bit too much for me. Yeah. And if them have, hopefully them have them father personality, calm, like laid back. Because if them have my drama queen personality over here, it just gonna be, you know, hopefully them not melodramatic. That's all we can say.
No. I have a story I can share, because I feel like mine is just she's just a brown version of me. Really.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is the challenge when like things get eaten and just slap it back with something that you would normally say, and you're like,
who taught you that? Where did you learn that?
You just have to breathe and be quiet.
Yeah.
But I want to take this time to thank you.
Yes.
For sharing your life story, being vulnerable and open, and sharing, you know, how you have transitioned through your different phases of life and some of the ebbs and flows, and how that have impacted like your worldview, how you see, you know, world today, and how you go about your interactions with people and sharing with people, and just growing outside of that. And to those who are watching or listening right now and they want to know where to find you, where do they find you?
You can find me at Momatic Solutions. That's my Angular on Instagram. I don't do Facebook and I don't do Twitter. I'm just on Instagram for right now, because the inflow of things is just so much. Or you can find me at momatic.solutions@gmail.com.
I love it. And I'll put it in the description box for those who want more information.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Nefa, for joining us.
You're so very welcome. If I could leave one thing with you guys, it would be, remember, if you inspire just one person in this world, life would be such
just
a
one. I'm a product of that inspiration. So, you know, it definitely feeds back into your life.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Walk good.
Walk good.